Well, it's 7:01.
Is that it?
Shall we begin?
Do we have a moment? Yes, thank you.
So, shall we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I was gonna suggest adding one item. I wondered if we could put in a 6.3 just for a little update on the climate conversation, if somebody might give a bit of a synopsis of where it was at.
Yeah. And Mark, you had something?
Yeah, I wanted to just have a quick little blurb about the composting in the soil.
6.4, composting?
I actually have two items as well. They'll be brief.
Yep.
One is Bowen in Transition and their home energy conservation videos. And
Yep.
the second is Resolution 19161 from Council, which is a direction to this committee. I can explain it.
Okay.
Just came out of the last presentation.
So the resolution is 6.6, building transition 6.5, composting 6.4, climate conversation 6.3.
Oh, sorry, no, that's my fault, I got it. I'm looking at the wrong one, sorry. Yeah.
So motion to approve.
Sorry.
Forward, yes.
All in favor?
Approve, in favor?
Yep.
Opposed? None? Carried. Adoption of minutes. We've all scanned them very closely, I'm sure.
Could I just ask, on the bottom of page 4, where it says Councillor Hoffman, and then it goes on, and then 2019 ECAP work plan, and noted that their alignment.
Sorry, noted their alignment is okay?
Noted their alignment.
Did you suggest, Marie, that you wanted to have a few little assignments thrown your way?
I will take the ones I have to, but.
Yeah.
I have that resolution here, line 19161, thank you for bringing that up.
So this hasn't, these minutes haven't gone to council yet, so
No.
that's correct.
Yeah.
So council hasn't responded to any of the recommendations here. Okay, so the council hasn't seen it.
We have not. That's one recommendation, right? The other ones were
Not
voted on.
Okay. So it's the composting recommendation.
really nice to have that summary of action items on page 7.
Yes, yeah.
Brilliant.
Because I forget things.
That's my middle name. So, shall we adopt the minutes? Do I have a motion? Alan, seconder? Mark? Vote in favor? Opposed? No. Carried. Public comments? There's a coat there, but no body. Okay. Action items? So that's page 7 to review those. Ellen and I have finished the work on, no,
We have a tone being edited.
yes.
Wow.
This is untrue.
No, we actually have yet to put our heads together.
That's right. Carla? Item 2 on page 7.
No, I haven't seen
Yeah.
Greg at all. He's really hard to run into at work,
Yeah.
not at the same time. But I will tell him.
So you're fine with that?
Ongoing. The BIMTAC minutes, BIMTAC was last night. So
Yeah.
they're not online or
Okay.
they've not been share approved yet. And David's not here.
And Mark?
I've sent a couple of emails, I haven't heard any back yet.
Okay.
I think that's me, the next one.
Yes, and that's done.
I did.
We got a tick, tick.
Yeah.
Yay.
And so I think we put it as the agenda item.
It's in there.
There's a couple missing because I couldn't get a hold of Greg.
Okay.
So I didn't know about some of these, but most of them were good.
Okay, so we've blasted through the action items. Business arising from the minutes. 5.1, review action items outlined in the committee energy emissions plan report.
That's correct. There's Carla's notes. This is really helpful,
Yes.
So I just went around to different staff members and asked them what they did because I wasn't here for years, so I didn't know a lot of them. There's a couple that aren't highlighted just because I haven't seen Greg yet.
Yeah.
But if anyone has any questions about any of them, I can give you more details. I just thought, I mean, this was something that I was asked to do, but it seemed like a really good tool for figuring out where we might want to
Yeah.
put some work in.
Item 8.2, organizational structure for climate action. That's actually done. That's this body.
Oh,
It was the establishment of
Right.
this committee.
okay, great.
On 6.8, I don't know if anyone's seen on Facebook, I think it was James Glaive, was kind of putting feelers out about that.
So I was saying some work done
Yeah.
because of that, and
Okay.
because also there's a Modo is possibly going to put some cars here. Has anyone heard of Modo? Yeah, I
Oh,
haven't.
wouldn't that be something? Yeah.
And they have different kinds of cars, so the
Okay.
truck may be one, and so I know that the Muni could support that by getting a corporate membership. So I think that that's something that.
Nice.
Where would they be located? In the cove, clearly, probably, but
I don't know, didn't get that many details, but that's, it's up to Modo anyways, so we're kind of waiting on them.
And so, do they have trucks?
They do,
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, ranging from pickup trucks to panel vans.
fantastic.
And in case you didn't know, there's 2 motor vehicles in Horseshoe Bay.
So you could bring them over.
Parked behind trolls in that public parking. And I'm a moto member, it's actually quite a useful option. It's different than a lot of them like Car to Go, where you can drop the vehicle off any place. The motor car vehicle has a home, and so it's got to go back to its home, or else there's penalties and that kind of thing. But it works pretty nicely for Horseshoe Bay because
You're always coming back
yeah,
there. So do you pay like an annual fee?
an annual fee, and then you give them there's 2 options. The low cost use one is you give them a loan of $500, and that goes in. That's returnable if you decide to leave the co-op, and then you have a rate that's like Car to Go, in that you don't pay gas, you don't pay insurance.
Just pay per use.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but you have to watch the gas. There's a credit card in the vehicle, so you can just gas up when it's below a quarter tank, and you're all set. And if you leave the lights on, I found this out. And you are on the ferry, and it's the last ferry.
Oh, jeez, the stories.
You owe them $50 because they're sending somebody to turn the lights off.
That's very funny. But it sounds like it really helps facilitate, and it's really,
Yeah. And I think it would be a wonderful thing to have a truck or 2 on Bowen for all those things that
Yeah.
you need a truck for.
yeah.
If it's hauling manure, you gotta clean the truck, you know, that's,
Sure.
Yeah.
Gotta wash your
Have
hands
a truck,
anyway.
yeah.
Any other comments on Carla's magnificent table? Well, I like the dates there too, the columns there, that's very helpful. Any more comments, or shall we move?
Just that, this goes through 2020, which means we should be thinking in terms of when we want to put together the next version of this and how to do that. We did this in a workshop with, I don't know if you participated in. It was with the Community Energy Association.
I was at a
You
couple.
were there.
I was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So would that have been 2016 that you did that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took probably until 2017 to actually get it pulled together.
So would you have a suggestion when we should ask for revisions, or do the workshop again
Next year,
next year?
yeah. Like probably start on it early next year.
Yeah.
In spring?
And how far in the future would you suggest going?
I think the 5-year timeframe
Seems to make
seems
sense.
reasonable. That also would take you into next council term.
Yeah.
It would be good to have it straddling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So are you gonna, like there are two sort of noted as completed, are you gonna be updating this? Or as we go? Is this gonna be something that occurs every meeting? For the minutes, am I saying that?
Probably not every meeting. I don't know if that much work would end up getting done each meeting, each month.
every quarter, every 3 months?
See if it's,
Yeah.
sure.
Put the finger back on the pulse then.
Yeah.
So I'll just say staff is noting status.
Sure.
Great.
So, is there anything for us to do for 2019 or 2020 to facilitate this stuff, or?
Well. Sure. What would you like to do?
I don't know.
I mean, I think, I'm looking at the yellow ones here and the orange ones, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Well, then, like, the blue, like, I'm looking at density bonus for energy performance.
So-
That's later, so that.
That's a 2021,
That
so
would
I
be a
just left
2020.
them out for now,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, the permits for stretch code, I mean, that's gonna probably come with stretch code, so,
What is a stretch code?
It's a step code, is what it used to be called.
Oh, okay.
post climate smart program delivery, I'm not totally, sure what that is, really. I mean,
Which one?
on
4.1?
4.1. So I'm not sure who the program would be by, maybe it's a hydro program or,
I think it probably was one of the CEA, the Community Energy Association,
oh yeah.
because they have sort of packaged events that they take to different communities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the details of it. But the full report, like this is just sort of like top level points, and the
Mhm.
full report dives into the details, so you could find the information there.
I know when we did the workshop, I thought that the education for developers and for realtors and that kind of stuff was really great, but I haven't seen a lot of opportunities to host educational events or anything like that, so, I mean, if anyone had any ideas for people who could teach courses or host workshops, that would be a
Mhm.
great thing.
Did you talk with Daniel about this?
I did, yeah. He said they are hosting, they had the business breakfast
Right.
where Greg gave a talk about step code.
Right.
And I think they were maybe gonna do one other thing. But I think that's all they have planned for now. And I had inquired about it before I left because, as part of the Green Shores workshop, I signed up with the municipality as an education provider for the building, the licensor people who
Yeah.
give, yeah. And I asked them about if there was someone they could recommend to come and teach about step code, and they didn't have anything at the time, but I could inquire with them again.
Yeah.
Regarding the realtors, it occurs to me, if there's a zoning transition initiative, the thermal imaging survey of the houses and so on, that could be something that realtors could suggest, and then it's a little feather in the house's cap if,
Yes.
or even just evidence to show upgrades that could increase selling price
Yeah.
or buying price.
Yeah.
There was one other thing that Tess said that they were going to do some sort of training for zoning and development permits for realtors, and she thought that might be a good fit to include energy efficiency and renewable energy in that package. So
That sounds good.
Yeah, very good idea, for sure. That whole DP side of things, in my line of work, it comes across, oh, didn't know. Realtors could have, if they were aware, pass along that information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Any more comments? I'm thinking each quarter we can think again of what additional things that we could suggest or help with as part of that process.
Yes.
Just a question, 5.1A, action updated, have we done that?
That just identifies the page number the document's on.
Okay.
Just give it a
And a question about that beautiful little A with the red arrow.
So that's an amendment.
Okay.
Because the original agenda came out and this was added later
Okay.
to a revised agenda.
Yep.
And if you want to go deep on this,
Yes.
I know you do. If it was just a document, it's got an A, but if it was an entire new topic, it's going to be written in red with an A.
Wow.
Okay.
Good. Up to speed. I did notice that it was revised to include your type.
So let's move to 5.2. Prepare 2018 Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program Report. Tell me about that.
I can
Okay.
So it's at the back here. I just included the 2017 report because we get a template comes in every year, and it's I checked 2018 and it's basically exactly the same.
Yep.
So there's a couple of headings here, like broad planning actions, building and lighting actions, etc. And we give them a list of things that the community has done themselves, or that we as a municipality have done, and actions that were taken in 2017 or 2018 rather, and actions that we plan on taking in 2019. And we usually work from the template. Maureen and Sloan and Bonnie and I did it one year. We didn't do this one. But yeah, we worked from the template to see if we've done the ones we said we were going to do, and then move forward. So we want to just go through it step by step.
Sure.
Especially it'd be great to hear about community actions that maybe we haven't heard about, right? So I can do
Sure.
this, or you?
Do you want to run this machine?
No, that's fine. I'll just take notes, so it's right on there. It's easiest for me. Thank you. Okay, broad planning actions. Let's see, so community-wide actions. Last, 2017, continue to promote transportation alternatives and increase participation in climate mitigation and adaptation activities. The Fire Smart Initiative, I think there was some activities done in 2018, right?
Yeah.
But I know that there's some workshops coming up in 2019, so we could probably put Fire Smart for both.
Do you know if
What's yours?
those Fire Smart workshops will be taking place this spring? I think it's a great time for them because You know, where already people are getting a little antsy about a dry summer, and so a workshop
I think
to,
like next weekend.
that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 of them coming up.
Okay, great, yeah.
So, and I mean, I'm not sure, but I think Jen might have gotten more funding for actually doing Fire Smart activities. So I think she was talking about bringing a chipper around to people's homes.
That would be so great.
Yeah, so if she can get the ball rolling on that, that'd be great.
Great.
Can anyone think of anything else community-wide that happened last year?
I'm just gonna jump in about Fire Smart. If you go to our webpage, you can look in the search function of Fire Smart, and it's got a list of 3 workshops, April 11th, April 28th, and May 6th.
Perfect.
I'll send you a link if you'd like.
Sure.
I guess in the island plan, which was just adopted, maybe this is for the coming year, just a commitment to conservation development principles. And that's a broad planning action, and it has impacts in terms of GHG.
Right.
So it's just looking at the deadline for this, and it's this same essentially as last year, so it has to be done by, it has to be submitted by the 1st of June. And what we've done in the past is we've done the front part, and then the back part of it, all the financial stuff, Raj and Shell have had that information from municipal records, so we don't have to worry about any of the numbers. We had a basis for the amount that we receive from the province, and the amount is generally $1,000 used for.
Just going back to the take part in engagement process related to Metro Vancouver's climate action strategy. That was proposed for 2018. Did any of that?
Yeah, there were quite a few of us who went to the engagement session in North Vancouver. You were there, Denise.
Yes.
And Sue Ellen and I and a couple of other people. And Dave was very involved in that. They didn't come to Bowen just because of time, but for sure, part of it.
Thank you.
Adopting the step code early, that was this year, wasn't it? Council?
Yeah. That's good. I mean, you just slot it in.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get your head around how this document works, because the different sections, sometimes things bounce around as you get a sense of how it, the next section is building and lighting actions. And one of the corporate actions was related to the step code.
Okay, what do you think? Wanna move along?
Yeah.
No actions then for that one?
No. So building and lighting actions, any that you can think of for the community? We had in 2017 neighborhood energy audits. Did those continue in 2018, the energy
Yes.
audits?
They did.
And do we know if the gym lights were replaced?
Yes.
They were.
building energy efficiencies. Promoted by the community, maybe?
Through loan and transmission.
Loan and transmission, okay, great. Anything proposed for 2019?
Stop code,
Step oh, yeah.
adoption of step 3.
And we had the air conditioning shut off at Badminton. That saved energy, right?
Well, neighborhood energy audits, so
Yeah, I'm thinking that too.
are there, is that just that it's, the equipment's available for people to use it? I'm just wondering if there was a chance for people to, well, some group to go around and help people do it instead of,
Yeah, that's what they do.
That's
Okay.
what going to-
Well, that's what Born in Transition was doing, but I don't know if, like, they, last time I understood, they had one at the, left one at the library for people to come and pick up and just do their own audits, or you can check in with Transition and see, because they had a series of audits set up, is that correct, Alan?
To the best of my knowledge, both.
Yeah, so you're asking
Yeah.
that we continue that kind of format so people continue to get aware of the fact that
Yeah.
they can change the,
because I think there's gotta be the help there too, because some people will look at the equipment and go,
Yeah.
Right, you're
So
right.
for example, when Rod and Jay
Yeah.
go to people's houses, they're actually able to interpret and
Yeah.
advise way more than just somebody looking at this strange piece of equipment with its image.
yeah.
What I had done is I had our shore come over and had it done on my home with Rod, and everybody was there because we were being trained or taught how to do it.
Yeah,
And what happened for me was actually quite amazing to see the simplicity of how many things you can change to make it airtighter, to make it more efficient.
yeah,
And so I think you're absolutely right that we had to be trained and taught, so, and these are the curious guys, right?
yeah,
So having a crew that's willing to educate people on how easy it is really, it's not that hard,
yeah.
it's actually quite simple. And
And I'm wondering if that could be supported too by articles in the undercurrent, and, you know, a case study, you know, somebody saying, I had this happen at my house, and it's so useful and,
So continuing the educational process
yeah.
that way, exposing.
And it's a kind of a publicity thing too,
Mhm.
not just that it's available, but here's an example of it working and how it helped my family, that kind of thing.
Right. I haven't been to the last several one transition meetings, but I believe in one of the recent ones, there was some degree of presentation by those two guys
Yeah.
to,
By Rod and Jay.
yeah, about their program.
That sounds great.
Maybe I could just jump ahead. One of the things
Yes.
I've added to the agenda. I've got a meeting coming up with Dave Pollard. He just got in touch with me today. And he said that Merida, Dean, Rod, and Jay, they put together 2 videos. They're 30 minutes in length about how to optimize your home's comfort,
That's fantastic.
health, and energy efficiency, specifically tailored to Bowen Island based on all the things we've learned from doing the mini energy audits over the last 3 winters, plus the expert knowledge of Rod and Jay. I've got the links, I can send to them. Each video is hot linked to questions on specific energy conservation topics, and then for answers, there are links to other resources. So there's an ask in here, which is how the municipality could help them publicize the videos, and also whether the municipality might be interested in sponsoring other videos on environmental topics, and maybe helping with the cost of some of those. So Jay was back on the 9th of April, and I was going to talk to him and get more detail. But in the meantime, I'll send this around to you guys so you can look at the videos. And I haven't had a chance to, yeah, that's a definite community action for
Yeah.
this year that they've done that.
They've done some really good
Yeah.
work on that in the
Yeah.
past 2 years.
Yeah.
That partly addresses your point, very well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
So, Sir Maureen, there were instructional videos for the kiosk camera and for just Bowen Center.
I don't know if they actually end up being instructional videos on how to
Oh,
use
okay.
the cameras, but they're dealing with optimizing home comfort,
Oh, and
energy
specific.
efficiency. So there's got to be something in there that's dealing with it,
Yeah.
how the winning energy on its source. But we can look.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Figure it
we'll
out.
find out pretty soon.
Sounds
exactly.
good. Thanks. I know the lights that Emma's putting, that Emma's research to put in down on Credena are quite energy efficient, and they're low light, and they're very friendly for wildlife. Yeah.
Disrupt the nesting herons.
Yeah, no, no, definitely not.
A little far out connection is the Canadian Astronomical Society has the Dark Skies program that the provincial astrological societies promote that from the point of view of both making it possible to look at the night sky and enjoy it, but it's also connected with the wildlife friendly options, and so they in the past have had resources about design and specific lighting that both homeowners and municipalities can use. Don't know if that would be something.
I think she said it was night sky approved as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
She had a couple of different approvals.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I really looked into this. So
Yeah.
she's
So-
thorough.
Well,
That's great.
It's interesting, it is an issue over the years that I've been here, just hearing from pedestrians who are walking past the 5:30 or 6:30 or 7:30 in the morning, and some new light bulb is placed in somebody's driveway or whatever, and all of a sudden the night vision experience of walking to the ferry is shattered.
Yes.
It's like it's one and with the right bulb, it can make all the difference.
Yes.
Well, I know just the new pub, like, as opposed to the old pub, because I used to, and will again, live above the Village Baker, totally different nighttime experience,
Yeah.
just different, the lighting scheme is
Oh, really? It's
huge,
much more
huge,
subdued
yeah,
now?
huge improvement.
Hmm.
Although it's nothing compared to being on the west side of the island, it was just a whole different ball of wax.
I think, shall we?
Yep.
Energy generation actions. Okay, so co-comments is done. Standard hasn't heard. That was 2017. Explore alternative methods for winter heating of proposed new municipal buildings. I feel like
Yeah. so
you've been
the-
looking at that
Yeah,
through the
the biomass
yeah.
boiler.
Yeah, okay. So I guess we'll continue doing that for 2019.
That's the one associated with
With the compost.
the compost,
Yeah,
right?
using the product, the byproduct, which it isn't composting, it doesn't get composted.
It's actually.
Yeah, so,
Is there, in the terms of reference for the architectural designs, et cetera, for the new community building and fire hall, is there anything along those lines in those terms of reference?
No. looked at options, but we didn't come to a landing on it, just in terms of the scale of the project. Things like a district energy system did not make sense. So, so at the moment, alternative methods are not being considered for the new municipal buildings.
Okay. So I mean, it occurs to me that such things as heat pumps, maybe, are they no longer considered alternative, they're already
We
mainstream?
looked at that.
We did.
Yeah. I don't know where they landed on it.
Mhm.
They're going to use the heat pump stuff.
So maybe that's one that we can say would continue in 2019?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at with that, is I don't know, and we'll talk about it later, I don't know like how much energy, like, we know how much energy you get at these biomass boilers, but I don't know like, how far does that energy go to?
Yeah.
Do you heat a building with that, or do you just heat water with that, or?
Or you just
Or what-
sustain the
yeah.
process?
Yeah.
Every year, dehydration,
So there are plans to put solar panels on the bike barn, on the dock, so that could be something for proposed.
And that's in the works. There's just a glitch that's getting resolved.
That third item under corporate actions proposed for 2018 is an interesting one.
It's done.
Is it?
Yeah. It's the
And-
generator.
So there's a big generator somewhere?
Yeah.
It's free. And your,
You want to buy it?
Yeah, no.
the
If I
things
come here
that
in
you
power, I
proposed,
would know.
the things that you proposed, Carla, does that emergency, I mean, it's, you know, the emergency hub things that you talked about a couple of meetings ago?
Oh, right.
I don't know if that's,
There was something on the news about that recently.
yeah?
Was it Victoria, or was it a big community project? They all built a bench together.
Yeah, that's we have the picture.
Yeah, so it was on TV.
Oh, cool.
Like 2 days ago. Brought the whole community together. They all love their neighbors now.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
But that's not energy, I mean, maybe that's for.
Wait a
some
second, we
preparedness.
talked about that in Parks and Trails, and we were supposed to talk about it in this committee.
Oh,
I almost forgot about that.
do you want me to
That's
bring up
really great.
Parks and Trails?
That's right, yeah,
Yeah.
that wasn't this committee, that was the party.
You can sort of
I know. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Parks and Trails has referred
What?
this neighbor hub to this committee. So, while
Was it
she
in March?
finds it,
February.
you should look at the file folder where you keep videos for Parks and Trails Committee for the last meeting, not the last meeting, but the meeting before. Hopefully it's still in there.
Okay.
If not, I might be able to find the email with it.
Yeah, it wasn't,
But, okay, so.
Okay, what was it called?
It's called Neighbor Hub.
The file was called?
not this.
And this is because it's all past, right? So was it in a Word document?
Yeah, it was a Word document, that you put the link.
So,
And-
that-
It's not.
So many files.
Neighbor Hub. Okay, I'll go to the email.
So what is this?
Sorry.
Just
Here it is.
Okay, so, it's a not-for-profit organization. They make these neighbor hubs, which are just a place that people can go in an emergency in their neighborhood. So they have in the video kind of a funny-looking big thing that looks like a big flower, and it's kind of odd looking, but they can look like anything. So what the one we had a picture of was just a really nice wood bench. And so in an emergency, you can go there and get information. So it would have like a two-way radio. It would have
So it's like a muster station.
yeah, you could get water, it would have a water catchment system.
Mhm. So wouldn't that be through EMBC or Emergency Social Services that would be more
Well,
relative to?
So Jen McGowan who was speaking with the woman who is one of the organizers of the not-for-profit, and she asked me if I would bring it to Parks and Trails because we thought a park might be a good spot
Oh,
for
yeah,
it.
right.
And
I
we
see.
kind of thought, well, we should ask them if they
Right.
thought that was a good idea, and they said, well, we don't know where to put it. Don't you think you should ask the environment and climate?
No, it was,
No.
I think you should ask the emergency program. It wasn't
Was it
referred to
just-
these guys.
it wasn't
was
referred-
to emergency.
Right.
Okay.
But it was a nice conversation.
Okay,
So it's more
Right, because
like
you got referred to us,
Yeah.
to
And
the
you
parks,
go-
because where
I
would we
thought
put
we
this?
had, yeah,
Like, where would you,
where would we put
where
it?
would we put it? That's
Of
what I,
course,
but I don't know.
it is kind of neat.
Yeah, I don't know, it is
It's a
neat, I don't know,
3-minute video.
but just thinking, I just blurted it out because it generates power for people
Right.
to use their phones, but I don't think.
Yeah,
it's
so you can
really-
charge your phone and stuff.
Yeah, but I don't
Um,
think it's actually applicable to.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's
Can
okay.
you send us the link? Is that easily done? Be great.
It's only 3 minutes. Anyways. So do we think that could be included here? Probably not. Not really.
Well, didn't it just get said that it was going to be referred to EMBC?
No, but I mean in the CARIP
Yeah,
court.
I mean,
No,
No,
not for any.
no.
No,
It's not really an energy generating action.
No, I.
well, you can hook your bike
that's
up to
somewhere
it.
else. You can actually. It's kind of neat. You can put your bike in it and
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
charge your phone with it.
That sounds
So it's
cool.
it's related, but.
It sounds like there's a small overlap.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we are on to the next section.
green space?
What's going on with the West Side Playscape?
It's looking pretty good.
It's happening?
It's almost done.
It's almost done?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
great.
it's beautiful.
Whenever I drive by there, I've never seen a car there, I must admit.
Mhm. I've never seen a child there yet, but lots of dogs.
Okay. Happy dogs on board.
They've got plantings done and, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's true.
Let's
Yeah.
get lots
Good
of
irrigation
action
system set up.
Yeah.
And the Grafton Community Garden Project is, actually, we're just on the cresting. We're at a place where we've got a design, we've got, the soil is gonna be supported this weekend. Following week, we're also gonna do some basic planting, some seedlings to grow. We have a kids area that's gonna be designated where the little boxes were. You know, when you drove by, you had this enclosed area, that's gonna be a kids area now.
Mhm.
So it's gonna be all fruit, strawberries, blueberries, grapes for kids, and yeah, and just fun educational area. And all around, it's all gonna be, you know already, it's an orchard, and all that's going to be fenced in within the next few weeks. So it's actually, going quite well. We just need more people. It's just, so we put out some postering this past week, inviting people to come on in and to see if we can grow a collective now of people that'll move it forward. And depending on what that takes, what that grows, yeah. So we've done well, actually. We've done really well.
A lot of work was done very recently with all that soil
Yeah.
spread and
Yeah,
mulch.
all that, and now we're just, now building that up, and, so.
Great.
mhm.
The considered Green Shore's approach to Tunstall Bay Beach makes me think of, we're looking at, one of the things that we talked about at the climate conversation was sea level rise,
Mhm.
and
I love the
and how that's going to affect shorelines, beaches especially. And so, I think, would it be possible to get a survey done of Bowen's beaches and an assessment of their vulnerability to sea level rise, so that in the future, the Green Shores approach could be implemented to combat erosion at those beaches. So that, you know, that beaches are the places where most of us interact with the ocean. So I think it's something that would be useful to plan for.
Yes.
I'm just looking at what's in the current island plan regarding that.
In that regard, I heard some mention, when I watched the video of the climate conversation, of updated LiDAR information becoming available very soon. I know the one that we already have for Boeing has 1 meter topography, which is pretty good. And that there's actually upgraded LiDAR that wants to get even more detail than that type of analysis of
Yeah,
the susceptibility to damage would be easier.
yeah. That's raw data that was
Yeah.
essential for that assessment.
Yeah, and just focusing on those
Yeah.
beaches.
The other thing about that workshop too was they had some maps developed by Adams Trust showing the different types of coastline, including beaches and associated wetlands too. So just a good solid information source too.
Right. It's one of those things that's useful to get the sort of high resolution views. Okay, now let's go in there and knowing which are the more susceptible to
Yeah.
damage, which are the softer substrates.
Yeah.
Go in and do a more
Yeah.
detailed survey or analysis there.
Yeah, and one of the beaches that immediately comes to mind is Seymour Bay, which has had a sad history.
Yeah. And you think of Arbutus, Alder Cove as well, which was armored at the very back of it,
Yeah,
because it was eroding, and of course it's going to continue
Yeah.
as sea level rises.
There's nothing specific on beaches
Mhm.
in the island plan. What there is continuing work on docks and identifying the areas where docks should not be permitted elsewhere on the island, which would involve, to some extent, an assessment of beaches.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not broken out as an item.
this is great to have someone who's got the island plan in her head for this, because we should be dovetailing as much as possible.
Makes it easier to get money.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put in a subcommittee for invasive species
I was just thinking,
2019.
yeah, we're talking about it, and I had a meeting with Kathy today actually about it, and getting things rolling with that, so it'll be a slow process, but yeah, starting to manage invasive species. I think at the outset, it's gonna be like a mapping thing. I think it's important to dovetail it with the parks plan, and if there's a recommendation in there to develop a invasive species, not bylaw, but management plan. So to work, to kind of pair it up with that, so we're still talking about that.
In that regard, just to share that, for example, back in the Collins Point development days, gorse was identified when the environmental assessment was done. And one of the recommendations was have a gorse control program in place to prevent the spread of this.
Yeah.
One could, in hindsight, say the requirement to have that was not written into the approval. And as a result, there's now gorse, the massive concentration that there is in what is now those two fairways near the Cupcutta restaurant is there, but there's gorse on all the roadsides everywhere.
All the way
as
to
they go
Forest
spread
Ridge.
around,
Yeah.
And so it's one of those learning, looking backwards.
And we talked about like control, but I mean, that's something that, now you're talking about resources, like, at this point, we're kind of at the kind of volunteer, like, keep it cheap kind of thing, and
it's
then,
crucial.
yeah, it's a step-by-step process.
Well, it could be a fitness thing, you know, where you go,
Room here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there an educational piece to that that you?
So that's
bring
one of the
forward?
other things that we're going to, so the first kind of steps, hopefully, it depends on discussions with the committee, the Parks Committee, see how far we want to go with it, but the first couple of steps, hopefully, are going to be mapping and public education.
Because that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
I think that
It
would
kind of
be-
starts there.
I could see you sitting there and bringing people around the island in certain areas and showing, you know, some of the important pieces that need to be addressed.
And that's kind of, I mean, like I said, we haven't really talked about it with in the Parks Committee a lot yet, but my vision is like, as you go out and map, you take, you know, maybe a couple of members of the public, because there's an app you can use to map, so it's all online, it's provincial,
That's great.
and then you can educate people like, this is gorse, because the big thing is, you gotta make sure that they're actually identifying the right plant,
That's right.
right?
So you have to have somebody who's got some qualifications there, because you don't want to be.
Yeah, or just,
Or was
so-
it
or-
somebody came to my garden last summer and said, that's an invasive species, pull it out, and I'm going, I don't think so, I
Yeah.
don't think so. And I brought a professional in, and the person said, no, that's a really good one.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, the nice thing with gorse is, I don't think there's anything you can confuse it
it's
with.
not easy to confuse.
Yeah.
That's one of the good things about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So regarding the beach thing, the concern you have about monitoring the beach water levels and so on around the, would you be doing that, Alan? Is that something, who would be doing that?
I'm more on the bio side than the physical side,
Mhm.
so it would be more like there has already been a bit of a project done at Tunsil Bay,
Mhm.
and there was an ocean engineer
Mhm.
involved, and so it's more along those things. It has to do with physical oceanography and
Okay,
currents
okay.
and wave patterns and that type of thing.
I'm just curious as to who would be doing that work, and if so, I'd like to be a bystander. I'm a curious woman. I'd like to understand how that works.
Okay, so should we move on, or is there any other?
Just one question about the license of occupation for Mannion Bay. Is that the process of getting from the province the right to manage and basically it's owned by it's transferred from the province to the municipality. The thing I've been looking at the mapping that Islands Trust has done on eelgrass, and it's not just Mannion Bay. There's many places on Bowen that have eelgrass in different stages of destruction. So the idea of expanding that from just Mannion Bay to most of the major bays on Bowen, at least looking at the feasibility of having more control over the way, well, follow the Mannion Bay model for other bays on Bowen.
Yeah, because there already is in the bylaw explicit mention of need to protect eelgrass, et cetera.
Yeah.
But it just, under the current regulatory system, development permit system, they don't get captured, so to speak. It's worth examining for sure.
Took a long time to get that,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
is that, yeah,
I remember that was talked about when I first came to Poland.
yeah.
yeah.
But maybe now that we've done one, it'd be easier to get another?
I don't think so. I think each will present its own unique challenges.
Yeah, because it really had more to do with the boats, didn't it, than the biota.
Yeah.
And in all of these other areas, the boat to biota ratio is so small. It's hard to justify.
You could justify it at Bowen Bay in terms of boats. So
Yes,
then-
that's right, there's some spots.
Yeah.
Sure are.
Yeah,
It's an interesting question.
and Tunstall Bay.
And we have to balance it with the fact that we're an island.
Yeah.
Socially.
And in some cases, it's, you just change the way you do the anchor cables with a float partway up, and so that you don't get the chain drag on the
Yeah.
tides. But anyway.
I guess from a, I think from a municipal perspective, there's also taking on the responsibility.
Yeah.
And Manning Bay has required a lot of staff time,
Mhm.
just lots of monitoring,
Yeah.
and lots of time interacting with Transport Canada as well as the province. So there would be staffing implications
Yeah.
as well if this were to be,
Definitely, good point.
which isn't to say that we shouldn't take a look at it.
Okay, let's flip the page, Carla.
So solid waste actions. Continue to hold, I'm just looking at 2018 now, so continue to hold fix-it fairs, I think that was
That's
done.
one coming
Mhm.
That's one. What is the next one?
14th of April.
13. I was thinking it was soon, and I have a broken vacuum cleaner. Sure, yeah.
Perfect timing.
Continue with high level of participation with recycling initiatives. Yeah.
And is there a musical element to the
I
third one?
like it.
The composing workshop, I love it, yes.
I think we've actually had composing workshops.
There is going to be one coming up actually at the Grafton. We decided to create these, don't know if you saw the mini video, that it's like a maybe 4 foot in diameter tube. And the way that it's set up in terms of its composting materials is fairly unique. And on the top, you have like this kind of star grid formation, and you put these tubes in for aeration. And did you see that?
No, I'm just,
It creates an incredibly fast product that's probably one of the strongest and the most, like they say, it's gold, absolute gold.
Great.
It takes about, to fill it up and to get it all, charged up, takes about a few months, and takes about a year to put, and there's no turning, there's nothing to do.
Sounds very, yeah.
It's really, really efficient, and so we're gonna have 2 of them, and the community will be welcome for those who want to participate in the creation of them in a few weeks, and also to be able to participate in bringing certain waste materials, and we'll have somebody monitoring that, so that the compost will be all done on its own without any handling or anything. Like, quite amazing.
Great, so that will be a workshop?
Yes.
nice.
Yes, we'll be advertising that. Yeah.
Nice. It occurs to me that a possibility for 2019 or 2020 would be to do a biochar workshop, possibly on that same place. I know that there was
Absolutely.
John before, he was interested.
Yeah.
And it does need lead time because you need dry stock, right? You know what that is?
Yeah.
Green or waterlogged
Mhm.
green waste, garden waste. But just sort of, this is the opportunity to add it up to a list, and then that way you can make
things that I've also seen is the action that the Ready Potato is doing with their food containers and
Yes.
their paper bags instead of plastic bags for almost everything. And I'm not usually a fan of legislating these actions, but they're only one of the food producer places on Bowen that I'm wondering if there's any way we can incentivize the other places to follow suit. Or
A few months ago, when Ellen brought the proposal to us, I had went back to her and I said I would be willing to work with her on the project and go and work on that level, you know, go to the businesses, create the information package, you know, bring the incentive in. And she was really excited about it. I said, just tell me what to do. Just give me, you know, like give me a point form of where you'd like me to go. But I think, nothing ever came of that. And I thought she had reconnected with you guys, but obviously not. Like you don't know anything about that?
I know she's busy as heck.
Yeah, it might be.
But, so my first suggestion is recontact her
Okay.
and say,
And say,
I'm
try
still raring to go. Can you just give me the boost to get going?
again.
And so that it's not, she won't feel that, oh, here's just a whole bunch more work. It's more passing the baton to an
Yeah.
enthusiastic
Yeah.
colleague.
Yeah, she's certainly done a lot of work on changing the climate internally in her shop. So to create an incentive for other shops to follow suit and to maybe even have a projection, you know, talking about it together, I'd like that, if we can get grounded and have projections for maybe where we could possibly take it, or having other communities that have done it that maybe we could, you know, project from.
It might be useful to have a climate conversation with the businesses
Mhm.
and just
Great
put
idea.
this in front of them and have Ellen talk about what
That'd be
she's done.
fantastic.
I know that the general store, the other day I was down there and there was a big batch of paper bags. And I asked Nancy what's going on, and we're shifting from the white plastic. And she said she had a number of folks who came in day after day and they were getting plastic bag after plastic bag, and she just got fed up. So she was giving them paper bags from now on. And she's not getting rid of the white bags, but people are coming on board. I mean, you started with the point you're not keen on legislating stuff, but all sorts of communities are
I
just
was
saying,
gonna say, yeah.
no,
Yeah.
this is not acceptable anymore.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if we're being asked by municipal council to, you know, figure out what climate action is gonna look like on Lowell, we could put that before council and let them do the discussion, the argument, whatever, and make a decision.
Sure.
'Cause I think like San Francisco,
New
Like-
York today.
okay, I wasn't sure, I didn't want to bring that up, like,
Yeah.
the whole city, like, we're done,
Yeah,
okay?
Excuse
Like,
me?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
That advanced?
they banned,
yeah.
They
yeah.
banned
They
plastic?
No
banned
plastic
plastic
bags.
Now, that's a really good start, isn't it?
right? Like,
Yeah.
Or that they have bags that are completely biodegradable, no plastic at all.
It says no plastic. in
That's
the
fantastic.
story.
There's a little village in a rural, in the lake in Guatemala about 5 years ago, and it's a very heavily tourist-oriented economy. And I guess enough tourists were concerned about the plastic bags, they sort of spread the word, got it up to the council, and they decreed no more plastic bags, and they had the school kids cleaning up all the leftover plastic bags, and from then on, none, and there were fines and, you know, carrots and sticks approach to it. And apparently very successful, and it's put a feather in their cap in terms of touristic destination, because they're so green.
and I think we're to the point where you pass this kind of bylaw thing, and who's really gonna object to it?
Exactly.
Like, are you gonna object to that? I don't know,
Yeah.
but,
It's getting close to smoking. Same thing. It's just
Yeah.
as,
But if we had a bunch of ideas that are sort of in response to council, we could bundle them and send them, forward. They need to have some sort of description of precedents, these
Mhm.
communities have done it, these are the impacts.
Yeah.
We have problems with our garbage right now, the amount of garbage that is going off island, part of that is plastic bags.
Yeah.
And it could be, I think that people would get on board with it.
I can see it as a way of being a green community and having it, plastered in tourism too, it's a green community, bring your bag,
Yeah.
because you're not gonna be served in the same way.
And I think the pub isn't using plastic straws anymore. Now there's dogs. Dogs changed to cloth napkins rather than paper napkins. So there are lots of small community level changes that have happened on this in the last year that have been, I think, really positive.
Yeah,
Yay, us.
yeah.
There is progress.
Okay. Shall we go on to transportation action? Just looking at the biking workshops, I see we've come to a new era of bicycling. The thing that's killed bicycling on Bowen is the many steep hills.
Yes.
And I now see so many people zooming by me as I'm walking up steep hills on their electrified bicycles that I think we're in a new era, and so I noticed that the municipality has upgraded that bicycle lane up the hill with those little bendy posts that really keep the cars from straying onto the bicycle areas. And I'm thinking that's something that we can maybe advise anytime there's road work done to extend that. So
Where
that-
possible.
yeah, where possible.
I think that's probably part of the plan.
Yeah,
That's the triangles on the pathway. Pathway.
yeah,
It's in the transportation plan.
Yeah.
Dave would know more,
yeah,
but yeah, a lot of work planned on
yeah. So that's pretty exciting.
What I like about those posts is it really it stands out
that.
to, as you drive by, hey, that's a bike lane.
Yeah.
Whereas, actually, today, yesterday, we were driving home from a job on the other side of the island, and the people in the car were like, what's all that? Well, that's the Trans-Island Pathway. What's that? It's that. It's a bike lane multi-use.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Where's that gonna go? Bowen Bay Road-ish, somewhere in there?
Yeah.
All the way across it, all the way across the island.
yeah. And, in cities like Edmonton and Calgary, they've got bicycle path systems
Ottawa,
that, yeah,
huge.
that are used by people as their commuter. They're not just doing it for their recreation. This is their daily way of getting to work and
It's like going back to the Netherlands, going back 30
Yeah.
years, where you used to see all these people going on to work.
yeah,
More greener than we are, for sure.
and flatter than we
Or
are.
flatter, yes, I remember that too.
Kitimat comes to mind too, another place with all these off-road paths.
Yeah, and even Whistler, they've got a bicycle path system that there's still people going in their Maseratis on the roads, but there's lots of people using that as their way of getting around. Okay,
So biking workshops continued in 2018?
yeah,
Continue to develop support and transportation alternatives?
Question
Think that
about
that's
the
happening?
continuation of, say, dissemination of information on the Bowen Lift
program.
Yeah.
You know, the signs are all up and that's fine. And occasionally you'll see somebody, especially in the code, but very
Yeah.
seldom elsewhere using it, but sort of getting information out that, you know, that's one of the things that we have specifically going.
Mhm.
And many of us are glad to pay back for all the rides we got.
Um, I think there's still work going on for the medical clinic,
Mhm.
and Bike Park was open.
Yeah.
How many doctors do we have now on board? I know,
One of the,
Yeah,
that's,
continuing flux.
yeah.
The truck share program is, truck share, investigating the truck share program.
Yeah.
Right.
And was it last year that Emma got funding for the Trans-Urban Pathways?
She's gotten a whole bunch of funding.
There was
Yeah.
that big grant that you got of 350,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or was that something that happened in 2018?
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what I recall too.
I think.
Last year's kind of a blank for me.
Yeah, it must have been given the timing of the transportation plan.
What's the install new transit signage about?
What is that?
Right above corporate actions proposed for.
Oh, yeah.
And when the branding was rolled out, so there, if you look at bus signs throughout the island, it's reflects the municipal brand.
Yeah.
And also includes more information about the times
Yeah.
of the buses, of down at Cove Commons. There's more detail than there used to be.
I noticed that the Bowen lift stop right at, near the parking ride at Bowen Bay Road and Adams Road.
Yeah.
There's now a municipal
Yeah.
bus sign on top of that hitchhike sign.
Yeah.
Was there not an app for transit that happened last year?
No, were they just
it was
piloting it?
This year, it's in
Oh.
its second round of piloting,
Okay.
so it could go down for 2019. I participated the first time around, it's not really, it's an app, but basically, we're just letting them know that you're there, you're not
Okay,
telling them to come anywhere.
right.
And
And is that us or is that Translink, or is that something we
That's-
asked for?
that's Translink, and it's something we asked for.
Okay.
So they'll do another round of trials and see what the outcome is.
The other thing that I'm surprised, and maybe this is in the works, is the buses on Bowen don't have GPS, so that, you know, in Vancouver, I can always tell where the 257 is, and that would be so useful that would make me take the bus more often, because if I'm
That's
in
a
that
really-
position that I need to get that ferry, and I have to make this decision, I'm running a little late. If I knew where the bus was, I would still take the bus when I often will get a lift to the Cove in my personal car, because I can't miss that ferry.
Yeah, or another scene that I've seen a few times where somebody will be standing on the corner waiting for the bus,
Yeah.
and I'll stop to say hi, and they say, have you seen the bus?
Yeah.
Like, I've only got so much time, and I've been
Yeah.
sitting here for 20 minutes, is there a bus today?
Yep.
You know, to be able to answer these questions, because they're very distressed, because they need a bus, they need to
Yeah.
move. You know, so you help them out if you can, but, you know, sometimes we just don't know, you know,
Yeah.
what happened to the bus.
It's supposed to be in the works.
Yeah.
My understanding was that they had, they in transit had intended to put something in place, and then they found they had some sort of problem that they haven't resolved yet. So I think the pilot project took precedence
Yeah.
over getting the GPS, but Translink is well aware of the value that that would have. And the more I participated in the pilot project, the more convinced I became that the GPS thing would actually be more valuable.
More about, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And it would be less disruptive to the bus driver, because the bus driver doesn't really need to know that I want the bus. I need to know where the bus driver is.
And that's what I was thinking, like,
Yeah.
he's gonna drive by anyway.
Yeah,
Does it matter that he knows that you're there?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't gonna be an on-demand system.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that, the GPS would be very helpful, yeah.
So advocate for GPS.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Because you're right, kind of your situation as well.
The advocate for water-based transportation, what's, that would be like the taxis, right, the ferries, taxis? Is there any news on what's happening with that this spring, or?
I don't know. I just know that the economics have always been a real
It's
challenge.
always been a challenge.
DC Ferries has changed its position somewhat on, my understanding, on alternatives to the big ferries. It was written into the Coastal Ferry Act that BC Ferries would look to alternative and additional transportation providers, and in something like 15 years, don't quote me on any of the 15 years or so that they've been operating under the Coastal Ferries Act, they've never once actually done that. So there was a big report that was done recently, the Ridley report, and it was emphasized that it should either be removed or they should actually act on it. And ferries has been responding positively.
That's good.
So they're being more amenable. And there's also some changes that were just announced today from the
Mhm.
Minister of Transportation, Trevana. And she very much understands those kinds of issues because she's from Quadra. And she criticized ferries for 15 years. She knows all the arguments from the user's perspective.
Shall we move on?
Yep.
Water and wastewater actions. Continue to develop and implement water conservation strategies.
Yeah, and that's,
And we've talked about the wells on the island, monitoring wells, I don't know if we can continue to.
was
That was
part of,
their
part of
action
what we're
item.
in the process. of
Yeah,
doing.
no, that's something we can continue to do. And
I think the third one down, corporate actions taken, the health workshops for private well owners, organized by the Islands Trust and Province. That was a great workshop.
It was.
And I think it should be done annually, because it doesn't, you know, there's so many well owners that, they're not all covered by one workshop.
Mhm.
Missed last year, can catch it this year, sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds like worth adding for sure.
and we have enough turnover too, that,
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And wells, I think, is one of the great mysteries when you move to Bowen Island, if you come from the city.
Oh, jeez,
What is this?
yeah.
So one of the big corporate actions is going to be moving forward with the water treatment plant, not just the design.
Yeah. And that's just for a portion of the island.
Yeah.
And that brings to mind the topic, which is the management of the reservoir. It's a double-edged sword, in that if we treat it as a basin, I think I might have mentioned this in this meeting before, right? So I think we have to get stricter about how to manage that lake so that we preserve its ecological values as well as its water storage values. And using it as a stormwater detention basin is counter to both of those.
And the creek, and the flow to the creek.
Well, that's covered by the design of the dam anyway, but, because it's got a permanent leak in it. And then if the water level goes below the bottom of the dam, as it does in drought years, then they have to put the pump on to deliver that water.
But because I think through the winter, we've been keeping the level low
For stormwater.
for
detention.
stormwater,
Yeah.
but does that affect the flow to the creek? I don't know what the proper flow to the creek should be for a seasonal thing.
It's hard to say without really detailed hydrological analysis, but I would think that the flow during the winter, once the lake's down, will vary as it normally does anyway. And even before all the changes to the new dam, there would have been an annual variability that won't have changed.
Right.
But anyway, so it's a water action which relates to environmental protection as well.
Yeah.
And it's very convenient, of course, to have that big detention basin with the ability to manage its water levels. But it's not good for the ecosystem.
Yeah, and it's not good for the water quality, because the water quality depends on a healthy ecosystem. So,
And in fact, that's exactly what put me to the filtration plant, is because the filtration plant is gonna need to work harder
yeah,
if we're playing that water level
Yeah.
beyond its natural annual cycle.
Because the more you saturate and then lower and saturate, the more sediment you get into the lake.
Yeah, and the more you aerate the sediments, the more you transform the nitrogen in those sediments into a soluble form, which will then fertilize the lake, which then requires more filtration.
Right.
and it also throws the carbon sequestration of the wetlands that are doing that water purification. If you draw the water down, that carbon, I guess, peaty soil
Yeah.
gets aerated, and off goes the carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. So it's a whole bunch of good things that a healthy lake and associated wetland do.
So maybe in terms of, what to bring forward into 2019, are we talking about link water management in Grafton Lake with environmental
Principles.
principles or ecological principles?
Have you thought of any strategies or any ways that the protection that you're talking about could be, implemented anytime soon, or?
Yes, and there's a complicating factor is that the culverts downstream are in disrepair and need to be replaced. Those are on schedule to be replaced this summer. Once that's happened, then it's just a matter of not messing with that water level throughout the winter. And then it's safe to do so. I realize that in the short term, it's been a bit of let's try to make sure we don't blow out our roads.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that's kind of the problem, is
Yeah.
the roads and drinking water trumps almost everything else really, so.
Yeah.
The culverts are budgeted for,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
it's going in the right direction.
and I think we're, looking at some big storm events, there's gonna be more of them too.
Mhm.
And I think maybe one of the things we've got to make sure this, that's in this system is managing for storm event, increased storm events. And I'm not sure exactly how that it can be done, but
But certainly the capacity of the culvert should be sufficient to accommodate the maximum projected storm.
yeah. And one of the best mitigators to high stormwater is a wetland. So making sure that we look after the wetlands in the systems.
They can see enough the beavers,
Yeah,
but they actually include in installing a little bit of detention
Yes.
between.
They've been helping you, have they? They've been supporting you.
Maybe meeting all the
Yes.
To make sure that,
yes.
And
We
one of
don't
the-
even have to pay them.
It's a community effort.
Yeah.
that's
And one of
right.
the points of the corporate actions here is continue to promote nature-based solutions in conjunction with engineering schools.
Yeah.
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 So has Laura at all spoken to you about the idea that was brought forward around the water school? I met her once briefly and she said that she'd done some work or some research on that. Do you know anything about that? Because that was something that we had talked about very briefly, and what we've done with the Graftons and creating that little kids area is that we're actually hoping to create an educational area for outside, so teaching kids about water conservation, proper use of water and so on. So I don't know if there's something I can do, or maybe I can go to Laura and ask her what she's done or where she can, because that's something I'm really passionate about.
I like the idea,
Yeah.
water school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just water school, that's outdoors, fun, but it's, hands-on.
And yeah, the other part of this too is, one of the things that natural playgrounds usually have is a water feature, because
That's right,
that's what kids are designed to
That's right.
to muck around in.
that's right.
And it's not just play, it's a learning thing where you start to understand how water works and that kind of thing. And so,
Mhm.
and you're also gonna be meeting some of the creatures that live in the water. You'll be meeting the frogs and
Yeah.
minnows and things like that too. So.
The little bit I know about the water school from the video that I saw, the documentary that I saw on it, is that it actually puts an awareness on the absolute, it's imperative that they have awareness of how to protect the waters, how to see, as what you're saying, the cycle that we use, and the importance of how to look at, for instance, the garden, and how the importance of where that water's coming from, and what you're talking is about, we have something very special here. So my understanding is that there's a number of different ways that kids can be educated around water, as you're saying, but also to promote an awareness of what we have as being very special.
Yeah.
And that attracts people on the tourist level. We can create all kinds of connections with other communities and creating something that could be educational for kids. So that's something I'd like to see.
I have a girlfriend who works for a not-for-profit called Waterlution,
I don't know, Waterlution?
Waterlution, and she's just up in Squamish.
Mm-hmm.
And they work with schools. I don't know if they're doing it this year, but usually they have a big group of volunteers each year that they take on, and then they try to sign up for classes at schools to talk about, they do water stories. They try to,
That sounds fun.
yeah, they do storytelling
Yeah.
to,
Yeah,
for the kids to learn about water
so
conservation.
illusion of water.
Waterlution,
Lusion,
like solution, but waterlution.
Like evolution,
Like
T-I-O-N.
I got it. Lucian.
Waterlution.
Okay,
So if anything interesting, I can put you in contact with
thank
her
you,
if
that'd be
that's
great.
interesting to you. Okay.
Climate change,
Is that climate change adaptation actions? So I think, actually,
Those all sound very current.
so this is just questions, I think. Any climate impacts, unless you have any impacts that you think are more relevant than the ones we already have here, or,
I wonder if we could just add on the first bullet point, seasonal drought and flooding.
Mm-hmm.
Because the last point deals just with coastal flooding.
Right.
Whereas we're seeing flooding on roads and
yeah.
all sorts of places.
People's houses.
Yeah.
There was a video that, was it you sent it out about water that runs off into the ocean edge and streams from the city, from the urban area? It was an amazing video. I'm sure you sent it out. And there was a study that was done in Victoria. And it was a very, very successful study, and it shows how if you control the stormwater runoff, you can actually change a great deal of the challenges that we would have on the island. Nobody, I'm sure other people would. I'll take a look in my notes and resend it maybe. You might want to watch that.
Was it through the committee or on
It was through the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was sure you were the one who sent it.
I do forget things, but I don't think.
You don't think so? It's a really fabulous piece.
Well, I'm as fabulous as probably me then.
I'll do this one. There are actions. Okay, climate change adaptation actions. So climate conversations, yes.
How about education about use of native plants and xeriscaping in your garden?
That's really a good one. Wild crafting too, on the island. I'd be really interested in trying that. Yeah. So is there somebody that you would talk to about that specifically? Because I remember, was it to you, Alan, that I'd asked that question about native plants on the island and doing some kind of piece of study of where's what, because they move around. They're not always going to be there when you look tomorrow, but
Yeah, I do remember we had a conversation about that at some point.
is there anybody on the island who has that kind of grounding that could help us,
There are a number of us.
that you can think of, that might want to?
I'd have to understand more clearly what you have in mind, but
It's actually Will who's bringing
Well,
it forward.
I'm thinking that, water use is going to be an increasing problem, and a lawn and typical English garden are not going to be the best activity to be involved in. So there's other types of gardening, or native plants are better at handling these conditions than.
I get you, yeah. I certainly absolutely know what you mean. I was sort of jumping back to our previous conversation.
And that's one of the things with this invasive species work I hope that the Parks Committee will take on, is not only like invasive species, but alternatives,
Yeah.
like, and proper landscaping techniques, don't plant a lawn, clover, or just
Yeah.
normal plants and trees and native stuff and things, and other, so that's hopefully something we're gonna address.
Yeah,
Yeah, reduce the need for sprinklers.
yeah, yeah. I still remember living in Eagle Cliff years ago. There were some people in our neighborhood that insisted on going to work every morning, leaving their lawn sprinkler on as our reservoir disappeared.
Right, with its leaky plastic liner.
Yes.
And the sad thing is, in the summer, your lawn should be dormant.
Yes.
When grass does.
Metro Vancouver has a lot of water conservation material
Yeah.
that can be used. I mean, they've got the Ledger Longo Brown,
Yeah.
that campaign. If you just search on their website, all sorts of materials will come up, and they actually make all of that available to be repurposed. So if there was a campaign that you wanted to work with, if you wanted like Bowen branding or some Bowen specific content, you can get that.
Okay, awesome.
And Sophie, communications coordinator, she gets material on an ongoing basis from Metro related to their waste campaign, their water campaign, and so on.
Awesome.
A related thought is that there are a number of landscaping contractors on the island. I wonder if,
Garden club.
and of course the garden club, I'm thinking of some sort of leadership from the municipality to incentivize these folks to get trained in or increase their knowledge in landscaping.
Yeah. And you know, a model for that could be the Green Shores, is that the right term, Green Shores, or the project BG's was?
Yeah, Green Shores,
Yeah.
I think it's just
Yeah.
Green Shores BC or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Because they have a system where contractors are trained and certified, and so they are given priority for doing this type of work, well, the Green Shores work, so perhaps it's a little too big for a municipality to have something that elaborate, but at least having some workshops for contractors to.
Yeah. And again, you know, partnerships between our community, our local government, Highlands Trust, Metro Vancouver,
Yeah.
you know, other levels of government who may have resources already, makes sense.
Yeah.
If you just found someone in the community who's really knowledgeable about that stuff and who wanted to teach other people, I'm sure, you know, we could use municipal hall, people could do it by donation
Yeah.
to the garden club or something if they wanted to be
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be really big or,
True.
That's
Yeah,
simple.
good
yeah.
point.
Put out a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there already are some people. There was one, I know when
When,
Nancy
yeah.
left, that is
When
probably.
did come back? She could come
And
visit.
she-
She would be a draw.
Guest appearance.
There you go.
Yeah.
Conversation. You know.
Okay, shall we move on?
Yeah, and there's other climate actions, if anyone can think of anything else.
Yep.
Last chance.
Well, if we've got till the end of May to put this in, maybe what we could do is we could all go away and give a think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
All
sure.
the things that
Sure.
come to mind once
Yeah.
we're outside of the room.
Yeah, I figured we'd have one more meeting to
Go ahead.
look
That's
at it.
great.
So I can, put on my action items, I'll write up what we have so far. And put it on the agenda for next meeting.
And with 2 members missing, so it would be good to get
Mhm.
Dave
Mhm.
Laura's input.
I'm sure David would have a whole lot of,
Yeah,
Yeah.
suggestions.
Yeah.
And an action item for everyone to think, have a think.
Have a think.
I like that. Sounds good.
As our old buddy Albert Einstein used to say, I think on that. I think on that.
who also had a horrible memory.
See, it's fine, it's not a
He
problem.
was really in the moment, wasn't he?
Lay it down before you hit it.
Oh, my item is already in here, 6.1, never mind.
Okay,
6.6 comes off the agenda.
shall we move to that one?
Oh, it's the same one?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
But, okay.
I completely went over, didn't bring it up.
So let's do 6.1.
Do you want to do it?
Oh, just to see it. Yeah, Sue Ellen brought to council just some comments thanking the mayor. So he was at municipal hall when the kids had their climate march on the 15th, and I chatted with them a little bit, and the feeling was that we needed to do something more, as a council, to recognize what the kids have done and to move forward on some aspects, concrete aspects of climate action. So there was just a little bit of conversation at council, and the suggestion from Sue Ellen was that we consider a climate emergency declaration, as a number of other communities have done, and council talked a wee bit more, and then referred it to this committee to think about that notion of a climate emergency declaration, but also what some of the actions would be that we would take if we actually said, yeah, there's an emergency, there is, so what would we do? And I think they're looking for the specifics, so, the plastic bag thing, that's a specific.
Yeah.
What else could we put on that list that can go back to council as a suite of recommendations?
Mhm.
And we don't need to do that this evening, but just get the wheels spinning a
Yeah.
little
That could
bit.
be a little brainstorming session, is
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
saying, I think it's
Great,
lovely.
yeah.
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 And I think David is writing a letter that we talked about in the discussion at the last meeting about there was a couple of things in the minutes.
There's a liability point. There's a point, write a letter
Yes,
regarding
yeah.
liability for climate-related harms.
Yeah,
So on page 5, there's the notes from the minutes. They were talking about sending a letter, and then they decided to slow down, and maybe David would draft a letter, and then the committee would discuss the draft. And there was a proposed recommendation that was not decided to defer it, but I included it because that was a part of the conversation. On page 6.
So let's have some discussion around the table about this. I spent a little time looking at what other communities have done, and the two that I immediately bumped up against were Richmond, which you can imagine has a lot on the line for climate change problems with sea level rise, and the city of Kingston in Ontario. And their council members, when interviewed by CBC and Global News, were saying that in some cases it's mostly symbolic, in that it's just recognizing that there's an issue here, and that the community has to do things about it. And one of the things that they were saying they were doing was every issue that council comes up with, they're generally having to look at what the financial implications are. Well, they should be looking at the climate costs and benefits of those actions, so that in everything they do, they're thinking hard about how this is affecting climate change. And so I think that's something that we could really, one of the recommendations that we could pass on is that staff and council do evaluate the implications of the actions each action taken. And of course, some of it, staff will have to say unknown. We don't know what the outcomes in climate will be from this, but at least they're having to think about it, and it's starting to show the things we don't know as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think so.
Yeah, that's a good.
Build it into the thinking.
Yeah.
A version of that has come up in council discussions.
Yeah.
And I think that they're quite sympathetic to it. It's just that the mechanism hasn't been put in place. So to have it on that list of, the climate lens is part of everything you need to consider in your report. I think they would go for that.
It's kind of like that checklist you see, like when you see a report from staff and who's looked at this bylaws and public works and parks and like the climate people or whoever that is. But this is one of those things you have to consider.
Yeah.
Probably more along the lines of, there's a financial implications section.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it would be a standalone section there,
Yeah.
rather than people, because you want the climate lens to be something that
Everybody
everybody
looks
Yeah.
at
is
it. Yes.
thinking in terms of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good idea, having like the financial,
It avoids the silo effect.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the environment comment,
Yeah.
everybody has
That's
to.
everyone has to.
Yeah.
But that's a good point, is like, it's unknown. Well, fair answer, but at least you've kind of given it some thought.
And that can be debated too, if a report comes out and says it's unknown, Maureen or other council members can ask for a little explanation of how that conclusion was reached, and so that it can be investigated and perhaps that acted on so that it is known.
Mhm.
That's a good idea.
So, do we need to, Maureen had mentioned maybe we need to think on this a little bit more and have this as an agenda item for next month, or should we start on at least with that suggestion now, or?
My gut sense is to give him and make a bigger list.
Yeah.
And have the input of the other two.
Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking I'd sure like to have David's input on this too.
So everyone wants to think about it, and you and I are going to put it on the agenda.
Yeah,
That's two
Easy
things
task.
to think of for next time. Right?
Two things,
Two things to think about.
when you're enjoying your night sky.
Yes.
any more discussion on that, or shall we move on?
Let's move on.
Islands Trust Declaration. What did the Islands Trust declare? Declare?
An emergency.
Okay,
That's-
oh, yes.
Is it-
Do we have a copy of that?
Page 29, so is that a different topic or the same?
Well, that's a separate, that's separate.
Oh, there it is.
policy amendment project underway, is there? So that's great, if they're gonna have to do it.
So this could be the start of our discussion next month. It's almost a template that we can start with.
So you want this included on next month's agenda?
Yes, please.
Might be useful to see examples from those other communities. And you mentioned
Yes.
Richmond and Kingston,
Yeah.
Vancouver's done
Yeah.
this, I think Victoria, I'm not certain about Victoria, but just some other examples from municipal governments.
That's great, basically, it's already
It's already there.
already there, providing leadership,
Yeah.
providing corroboration support, sending
Yeah.
to others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Providing powers and resources in local governments.
A central focus, I like that,
Yeah.
on equitable climate change mitigation.
Now, Ellen, you wanted to get a report on the climate conversation about sea
Yeah.
level rise?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a feel for, I only saw a little bit because of the recording was such that when there was a melee of people, we couldn't really get much out of it. But if any of you who were there could
Yeah.
briefly distill out what you thought and what came from it and so on.
Sure.
What was the date on that, please?
That was on, so, it was presented by, the Living Oceans Society, a fellow named Claude. And, he gave a presentation about, the basic things that you can expect from, sea level rise, and how much it is perhaps going to reach. So it was the basics that started, and then it had some questions where people were asking about different technicalities about, one of the things that Claude mentioned was there's a setback from the ocean shore that is 30 meters, I think, on Bowen Island, and that it's horizontal distance from the shoreline, and that's going to change, and that the recommendation is figure out what the at least median level rise is going to be, and then move that, the municipality should start moving their setbacks.
Based on the new high
Based-
water.
Yeah. And so that's one of the core things, and of course there was a little climate change denial question that came up from one of the participants, and a well-known person. And but then we had an activity, two activities of going looking at maps and identifying areas of that. Well, I'm going to. Mark was so good at identifying some of these places, so I'm going to get you maybe to take the ball and talk about those two mapping exercises.
Yeah, so there was the two, one was, where have you seen problems with erosion around the island, like actual
Coastal erosion.
coastal erosion? There was a lot
And
of,
that's now.
yeah, that's now, and then there was another map that was, you know, where the potential places that we need to worry about. But I mean, the effects that we've seen now, it was amazing how many, like, we were just putting dots on it, and it was like everywhere. Yeah.
Especially for having had storms this past.
Well, and that's the thing, right? And, you know, there was a few of us, you know, Sue Ellen was there, and people are familiar with a lot of the public beaches, but there was a lot of like private, like you know, the company I work for, we have some properties on the ocean, and there were some other people with properties, like, so it was really kind of astounding, like, it's really everywhere,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So that was one of the tables?
That
in
was, yeah, and the other exercise was, you know, where, you know, what,
Where we had predicted there would be big problems if sea level continued to rise. And so, you know, some overlap.
and problems with infrastructure, I think
Yeah.
was, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And the other thing that happened in that infrastructure one was what dangers to places of high biological diversity. So, you know, we started pointing out where there were eelgrass beds that sea level rises or more storms come. There's those valuable ecological assets were going to be in danger too.
Right.
So, and
What about human-made infrastructure?
yeah, there was that too. You know, what was going to get hammered.
Yeah, and, you know, some talk about hardening, of course, always comes up. A couple of things that really, I thought was really interesting was in Halifax, they're doing a lot of work with reef balls. I'd never heard of it.
I heard him mention it in the thing, so I'm.
Yeah, so, and I haven't looked it up yet, but yeah, it's just creating.
The explanation that Claude gave was that they're concrete matrices with lots of holes in them, and so that you pile them up on the coast and they just roll, you know, lodge against each other, and so you know, you've seen a wave hitting something that is a lattice. The waves dispersed, and you know, you get a whole bunch of dissipation of the waves with that, and it's full of habitat for marine creatures. So it's doing two things. It's increasing the biodiversity by giving more habitat, but it's really dispersing the wave action as the waves come into the shore. So it's something that I think sounds fitting for some places on Bowen if there's a lot of erosion if there's, if the shoreline has a batch of those balls. It's not the same kind of hardening that a seawall has, where it's this thing. I guess it's the difference, you know, there's that fable about the oak tree and the willow tree that were standing together, and the storm came, and the oak went, fell over, and as it's lying there saying, "Why, I'm stronger than you, why did I fall?" And it was, the willow said, "Oh, I've been." And so that's kind of what the difference between reef balls and a seawall is one you've got this thing that's trying to stop the wave, and the other one is just making the wave move around you. So.
And I'm curious about docks, especially in view of the recent temporary closure of Mount Gardner Dock. And, you know, was there discussion around that and implications thereof or anything?
I don't think we really talked about, I mean, just kind of like the general comment that, like, you know, the structure that's built where it is just is not gonna last because the ocean's gonna come up. So, but there was, kind of on that, one of the points that came up that I thought was kind of cool was there's the BC Flood Management Construction Boundary Guideline that local government, and the Local Government Act gives local governments rights to set our own floodplain rules.
Mm-hmm.
So, in this flood management construction boundary is a guideline put out by the province that informs local governments for that. So, I don't know exactly the details about that, but yeah, it sounds like one of those things that.
Might need to be applied to a projected future sea high water mark.
And that's where that high water mark comes in, you know, that's something that can inform like an OCP update to, you know, maybe the 30-meter thing doesn't work. I think that's one of the things you have to look into.
Okay. And so that was the other related part to that I had in my little notes that I wanted to raise was the LiDAR information that's apparently in the works and how important that will be.
And that's like we're on the verge of getting that, I understand.
I don't think it's as good as, I don't think it's that great. It's like it's LiDAR for a very large area. It's gonna be more, I think, to make the ortho photos really good, you know, so that they can place them properly. Do you know what I mean? Like they do the pins and the,
Stretch the photos to fit.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
everything,
I knew, I haven't written down some of, but the, I just want to say it's not going to be so that you can see like each tree and each, you know, like,
Sure. Okay.
so it's,
So the resolution.
the
may not be
resolution
that
is not very
small.
big. It's like,
Okay.
just a second.
Yeah.
One of the other points that came up in addition to the reef balls was Boston, New York are using oysters to,
Right.
Yeah.
but oyster farms, so they hang, which actually dissipates wave energy,
Yeah.
but also oysters like filter water. And so something we were talking about was with Mandy Bay,
Yeah.
like how it's, you know, there's a lot of runoff and stuff, and you know, maybe there's a solution and someone wants to make an oyster farm in Mandy Bay, and Steph would probably buy oysters. It's disgusting.
Oh, I just think that's such a good love ideas like that.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, I mean, the oysters already grow there anyway, so
Yeah.
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 why not?
The
Don't
LiDAR,
need them raw.
Oh, jeez.
the LiDAR is 12 points per square meter.
Okay, in terms of horizontal, I'm curious about the vertical resolution difference. Right now, what's already available is 1 meter. And if they get, you know, since we're talking 1 meter in the next 50 years, is it?
Half meter next week. Sea level rise?
You're right, half meter.
Yeah,
So it'd be nice to have a half meter resolution.
yeah.
Yeah.
for the LiDAR. At least for the
Yeah.
first 5 meters.
one of the other things that was talked about, I think peripherally, is the fact that sea level rise is happening, but at the same time in where we are, the land is rising too, because it's still rebound from glaciation. And so I've read in other sources that the Salish Sea is going to get, it isn't going to reflect the sea level rise that other places on the planet will get, or even along the Pacific coast, because we're still rising up fairly quickly. So as the sea level rises, so are we, and so it's,
There's a natural mitigation happening there.
but
Yeah.
it's still going to happen, and despite some of the contrary things that were suggested.
Right. Thanks for raising that, because that was one of my, through my work, I've come upon that in the seashell area.
Yeah.
Where, in fact, the water is going up, but the ground is going up too, so the straight average sea level impact is not so big, but the storm surge and wave height, those sorts of things are
Yeah.
increasing, so there's still a sort of a net increase, but it's not as bad as it might have been.
Yes.
Or will be, another millennium.
And for us, climate change is giving us bigger Squamish winds, and so we're still going to get more erosion, more king tides will be kingier.
Yeah. Well, interesting enough, it's not just Squamish winds, even like the easterlies and the westerlies.
Yeah.
Well, the south issue that hammered us on the 20th of December.
Yeah.
That was,
So that's, I think, the core of it. The other thing is they're going to put our information onto a GIS system in a couple of layers. And I think it's initial work that I think others will be working on with more precision. We were the coarse treatment, and I think people with a little more data are going to be improving on our work.
And this is Highlands Trust-wide?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The two exercises that we did, they're gonna take and transpose that information onto a GIS layer.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. And then there was a promise of emailing information out. I was regretting not being there to have.
And I've shared it with you.
Oh, yes.
I think I already said,
I have.
yeah, okay, yeah.
You appreciate that, so that's.
And if anyone else wants that,
I'd love to see it.
I
How
will.
many people were there?
It was pretty good. It was probably 20, 25.
Yeah. And it was the typical sunny weekend day where the highest number were at the beginning, and a few people's gardens came and grabbed them by the scruff of the neck and took them outside. But,
Oh my God.
I was a bit disappointed in myself for not having my ear to the ground or whatever enough to catch it. Because
Well,
I read it in the Undercurrent that afternoon, and I went, oh damn, I just missed this.
yeah, I think it was, there were a number of people that were conspicuous in their absence that I thought would be there, and talking to a few of them, they just hadn't got the information, so I think that's
I think there was
something.
only maybe a week or 10 days prior that it was put out, but it wasn't a long lead
It
time.
happened pretty fast.
Mhm.
So I think if it's done again, I will talk to Islands Trustee to talk to their staff to maybe,
Advertise more or whatever,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But that's great that there's that follow-up information that's going to be available. And the video was good for, that's sort of a backup plan for
Yeah.
this.
You mean the video of Like,
Yeah,
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 okay.
you know, it gave
Hmm.
somewhat of an idea
Yeah,
of what.
you could see a bunch of bums looking at maps at the end.
Right. And a bunch of noisy people walking around while this little thing was trying to talk at me.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, thank you.
So,
And I'll share those links with the whole committee. I'll just
Great.
email it to you.
and composting is the next step.
Right, so I was gonna prepare something a little before, but I've been busy. So I looked at the last, the on-island composting committee, the report that came out, Maureen, you wrote it, that group. Because I'm interested in, like, the amounts of green resource that we're gonna produce.
Yeah.
And in that report, I think it was mentioned, I don't know what the time frame was, but that the green resource was gonna go up to between 700 and 1,000 tons. And I don't know when that was expected to happen. I think it was maybe when if a composting facility was brought online and it became more feasible or more convenient for people to compost. And the reason that I'm interested in this is because last meeting we had Lori, so the woman who's working with the agriculture group. Julie. And I just want to make the point that there's more than enough green resource to go around to everybody. Because, I mean, I've been pushing for this biomass boiler because I think it's such a great idea. But the 700 to 1,000 tons, I don't think took into account the waste generated by private landscapers. I talked to my boss and she wasn't at the time, and none of the landscapers were. Talked to her how much they just on their own take to town. Plus there's the stream from the municipality when they do their brushing along the roads. There's a burn that happens, I think yearly up at Veterans Park, just the stuff that they've collected. That can be turned into a stream. And yeah, that's basically what I had. And another thought that I had is when these, and I'm not speaking against the agriculture on board, that's great, I think we should be doing that. But once those groups are up and running, and once they have their soil, they're gonna be generating their own streams. And the thought that I had was, as opposed to having a big compost facility, municipal facility, maybe these agriculture groups could have their own composting facilities that they compost their own resource. And then if they need extra resource, then they could come to the municipality and we could provide it for them just here, because I do believe there's going to be access. And then they could use any excess that they produce as to sell to the public to raise money for themselves. Just some thoughts that I was just throwing out there. I just wanted to get that out because I'm not at the next meeting. So,
So is this boiler actually soon to be, brought into this facility, or?
oh, no, we're just, I don't think
Are
the
you
decision's not been made yet. That's,
You're just investigating the possibility of it?
yeah. And I'm hoping, I mean, my thought has been to integrate it into the fire hall or community center or some municipal building as a heat source.
Yeah.
So, but I think there was a question of like how much green waste do we produce? And in talking to Louise, she believes the 1,000 tons a year is conservative. She believes it's going to be a lot more than that, especially with new people on the island. So,
And there was that discussion that there's highly likely to be a surplus, right? In fact, that's what's being found elsewhere,
right.
that it
Yeah.
seems to be, if there's not another use for it, for example, as fuel for a boiler, then you end up with more than the assimilative capacity of the surrounding
Right.
agricultural land.
Yeah, and that's been my point, is that this is the problem with a lot of jurisdictions that we've been running into, is they create all this compost and they just end up putting it over the landfill anyway. So I think the more options we can use to keep the green resource on the island, the better.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Just one little piece related. Carla was following up with the at the time did not approve going forward to the next stage. So we're trying to find out if we can retain the funds.
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, the province will take a while to get back to us.
Mm.
It's just, it's $10,000. It's not a huge amount of money, but it would be helpful to know.
Mhm. I mean, that's why part of the record in the minutes to go to council is, like, how much compost is the island gonna need? That's, I think it's a key piece of information, because I don't know how many agriculture groups there are and what their kind of scale is, and how much homeowners are gonna need, because, and one of the points is that, you know, compost is not soil. I mean, soil has an organic component, but, you know, soil has a lot of minerals that's really important, so, you know, when you go to the transfer station to get your garden amendment soil, like, that's 25% sand. If you get the turf one, that's 50% sand, so if, you know, if someone wants to create a garden, it's not just compost they're gonna need, it's gonna be sand, so clay. You know, we're this is the time of year that we're bringing in all of our amendments right now, and we're getting, you know, we're putting like a couple of inches of compost, an inch of compost on all the garden beds. It's all we really need, so.
It almost sounds like the thoughts you're having are making me consider what we were talking about with the plastics. You know, you remove the plastics from the island, and you're looking at a green environment. If we were to do a study that looked at, as you say, all the agricultural groups, but all the businesses, and look to see how could we transform our system in a way that this would be the hub for the compost, and it would actually harmonize this whole question of what kind of soil are we creating, because if we're creating a product that we know, then it actually has a positive impact on the soil overall.
Mhm.
If we, you know, instead of all these bags of compost that are being brought in from Home Depot,
Oh, absolutely.
it's like,
I
you
mean,
know, it's
there's-
like we're making headway as far as being a green
Yeah.
community.
And I mean, that's the point that I want to make, is that, you know, I would love to see the green resource go to creating power, you know, in this boiler boiler and heating water in buildings and all that stuff. But there's still more than enough left over for the agriculture people and the private
Exactly,
homeowners
so,
and the biochar and, yeah.
so that could be a study in and of itself, though, like, maybe Julie would be interested in that, because that's the kind of thing that I could see her chatting up a storm about.
It's a key piece of information, just to know how much, like, what's the use of,
Yeah.
like, for gardening purposes.
It's a really important question, and it wasn't asked as part of the earlier work. You
Yeah,
know, the core question, how
Yeah.
much of this stuff do we need?
right.
It was all oriented towards, we don't have enough to actually feed a system that will be financially feasible.
Exactly, yeah.
And it was the projections in the future, but I mean, from all accounts, I've heard regarding our waste, we are just green waste galore.
And that's why I like this system of the bioconverter that just, it doesn't compost it, it just dehydrates it, turns it into this coffee ground material. I mean, you can compost that, I mean, and it's always, and you don't have, there's no problem with rodents, there's no problem with odor, there's no problem with leach, you can just save it. Whatever you're not using for heating a building or whatever, then you can go compost that to order, almost, because then we compost so quickly. I think we just need to have like an idea of how much we need and different options,
Yeah,
so that, because the big thing what we're trying to do is not transport it off the island
yeah.
and throw it into a landfill, because we know that creates methane, and that's terrible stuff.
Okay, let's roll on to Owen in transition.
I already mentioned that, and I'll circulate the emails,
Okay.
just regarding the video. And then the other item I added was already on the agenda.
Okay,
We're done.
all right. Information items, 7.1, the 2019 island plan.
So those are the information items, Chair, are just there for people
people to look at if they want to.
Okay,
So I thought I'd just, do that, I would find a link on every agenda all the time.
yeah, that's great.
Sounds
Forever,
great.
it's used, right?
And the Community Energy Association, March newsletter will be interesting too.
Yeah.
So, we come to, next meeting will be May 1st, May Day.
Mayday.
Mayday.
And,
That's very appropriate for declaring climate.
Yeah.
so,
Whereas